follow-up conversation I had with Mr. Dargy recently. We were looking at other ways we maybe can soften this up a little bit, possibly even add some, some steps in this location, and it would really truly take it out of the classification of an ADA accessible route. Going with the slopes in there, the retaining walls on site, as we presented previously, there are substantial, numerous walls of substantial heights. That is done to try and balance the earthwork on the property, as we have a very high plateau where the residential home is on the north side, and it slopes down quickly 30 to 40 feet across the site down to Spring Hill Road. We're trying to balance the earthwork, so we are cutting on the north side and filling on the south side to get in. We would, as a condition of the approval, I believe Mr. Jardy points out in comment number 32, we would agree to provide the signed and sealed structural wall calculations to him prior to signing of the plans for his review, to make sure that any of the reinforcing requirements could be constructed prior to construction on the site. One of the major concerns that Mr. Dargy had in his previous review letter was some additional soil testing on the site to be performed for the stormwater basins. We have done that and provide that information in the revised stormwater report that was submitted. And the basins on site in the stormwater system was adjusted based upon that information. As I mentioned, complies with the stormwater regulations, continues to comply with the revisions with the stormwater regulations. There are some additional information clarifications needed that we will provide Mr. Dargy on some of the items, but they're mostly technical and minor in nature, in my opinion. The last items, item number, that was item 47 in Mr. Dargy's report, just to point that out. And the last one is items 51 and 52 in his report regarding the downstream capacity and conveyance. I'm going to go shift to sheet 6 of 25, the utility plan. The outfall from the stormwater system connects to the existing system located in Spring Hill Road, which discharges in a southerly direction between two of the residential homes. There were concerns by the homeowners raised during the use variance approvals that we went through for this about some flooding and high water tables or water in basements that we have maintained and understand, and we want to be good neighbors. As I discussed with Mr. Dargy, we would agree to meet with him on site to inspect the area through the residential homeowners. Obviously, we don't want to walk on their property without their permission, and thought it best with Mr. Dargy to help us facilitate that, and walk there and just take a look at the existing conditions out there to see if we see anything that is problematic. In addition, we would agree as a condition of approval to TV that line, do a video inspection of the downstream line to the outfall pipe to the south, and review that with Mr. Dargy. And if there are any repairs and upgrades that are necessary to make the system function in a more appropriate way, to ensure that there are no impacts to these neighbors, we would agree to that as well. Finally, just item number 61 with agency approvals. This is one where we have almost all the approvals obtained for the site. OBMUA, water and sewer, preliminary and tentative approvals have been received. NJDOT, there is a permit required for the closing of the existing driveway to the residential home that we are in the process of obtaining right now. We have received certification from Freehold Soils. As I mentioned, the county conditional approval has received, and we are awaiting the final letter of compliance. And regarding the NJDEP, we have an LOI for the wetlands located on the eastern property line that's located behind the two apartment buildings. We also have a GP6 for the filling of that isolated wetland on that site. And we have also received our water main and the BWSC and our TWA sewer main extension permits from the DEP as well. And with that, as I mentioned, the rest of the comments in Mr. Dargy's letter, we would agree to work with him and comply with as a condition of the approval.
So, Sean, just to confirm, we're just asking for the one variance, which is for the sign.
That is correct.
On Mr. Dargy's letter, he had noted 2 variances, but number 2 has to do with screening the refuse enclosure, and we are going to just provide that screening, so we don't need the variance for it.
Correct. We'll add screening down here. It erroneously left off the plan with the intent to not ask for a waiver for that, variance for that. Correct.
Okay, so I don't have anything further for Mr. Delaney, but maybe the board or its professionals have questions.
Thank you, Mr. Goen and Mr. Delaney. I'm going to go to Mr. Dargy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our report is dated July 13th. Like Mr. Delaney and Mr. Goen said, we do have a pretty long letter. It's about a 12-page letter, but most of the comments in there are pretty much of technical nature that can probably be handled post approval should the board act favorably on the application. As far as the compliance with RSIS, yeah, it's our position that drive aisle 1 and drive aisle 2 would have to comply with RSIS requirements. I don't particularly have a problem with the design of the roadway as far as the width and curbing and all that goes. Standard type of drive aisle for a parking lot. So I don't have a problem with that, and I think our fire marshal had comments regarding other issues, not necessarily the drive aisle. So I don't have an objection to the board granting a de minimis exception from the RSIS for the drive aisle. The other items, let me just go through here real quick. And like I said, as Mr. Delaney said, most of these items we did meet, just so the board knows. We did meet with the applicant and his professionals twice, actually, since the submission of this application for final approval. We met after the issuance of our first review letter, and we also met yesterday after the issuance of our second review letter. And the applicant has agreed to comply with all the comments of our letter. The one item which Mr. Delaney covered, which I'd like to just reiterate, is that we would recommend that the structural design calculations for the retaining walls be a condition of approval that has to be satisfied prior to signature of final plans. I talked to Ms. Shapiro about this as well, and she's in agreement with us because this site relies heavily on retaining walls and extensive retaining walls that are close to the property line. So we want to make sure that the walls can get constructed within the bounds of the property without the need for easements on adjoining properties and what have you. So for that reason, we would request that be made a condition of approval. And again, we did express that to the applicant. The applicant doesn't have an objection to that either. With that being said, I'm happy to go through any comments that are in my letter, but I'd rather not put the board to sleep since we are at 9 o'clock. So I'll be happy to answer any questions the board may have. If not, we can also, I know Tim Kaleo-Kalani is here. He did the planning review. He can cover the variances and certainly all the landscaping and all that as well.
Okay. Mr. Dargy, you spoke about the condition of the retaining walls. Could you just highlight that again, please, so that
Certainly
everyone understands it?
Certainly. So, and I'll have to ask Sean to play Vanna. There's quite a few retaining walls on the site because the site falls. There's quite a bit of grade change from Old Mill Road to the Spring Hill Road frontage. So in order to actually to create a level area where you can build these two, fairly large buildings, you need to use some extensive retaining walls. So right there's quite a few very large retaining walls. But I think that one there might be 12 feet tall, and it's pretty close to the property line. And then on the other side of the site, we have a similar situation where we're filling that area, and you have walls along the drive aisles and the drainage basin. Since like I said, since those are pretty extensive and pretty important parts of the site, we want to make sure that those walls, particularly the first one that we looked at, are constructible without impacting the adjoining properties. And the only way to really do that is to get the final structural design done and the calculations done and submit it to the township before we sign off with the final plats, final site plans. Because what we don't want to have is to have that process being done when you've already broken ground and you've already got a disturbed site and everyone's under, pressure to get this design done and reviewed so that, the project can keep moving and don't have the impacts of the adjoining property owners any longer than they have to be impacted. So for that reason, that's what we're requesting as a condition.
Would it be your understanding that the applicant is willing to do that and is going to provide all of that? So
Yes, we met with the applicant yesterday and went through point by point through the entire letter actually, and on that point, which is in our letter, the applicant is in agreement.
So you're satisfied from your position that the applicant and his professionals are cooperating and they're going to comply with all the regulations, with the exception, I believe, the drive aisles are going to need a design waiver, I guess?
Yes. Yes.
And then and Mr. Kalukalani is probably going to talk about the sign, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
That'll need a variance. But
Yes.
everything else has been taken care of, correct?
Yes, we went through all the comments. The applicant is in agreement with the comments
Okay.
In our letter, so we can come to an agreement on all those, and they can comply. And most importantly, the thing that I use as the deciding factor is in complying with our comments. I don't believe that there will be any substantive changes to the plan that you're seeing in front of you right now.
Okay, before I go to the board for any other questions of either, why don't I get Mr. K in right now? Let him talk about that sign because that may come up as a question from some of the other board members or anything else he wants to talk about. Then I'll go back to my board members. Mr. K.
Sean, you said that the sign's going to mimic pretty much what you have out at the other site, the Oak Ridge site.
Yes, it was the sign that's on the plan is the same size dimensions that was presented as part of the Oak Tree Plaza during that approval.
Could you just describe, for some, maybe the board members that haven't seen that, the materials, the colors, the font, just so they have an idea what it's going to look like?
Certainly. Give me 1 second. We do have a detail. On sheet 15 of 25, the construction details site in the lower right corner of that the plan. Obviously, it's an externally illuminated side, brick base of some sort with a mantle on top of it, and lettering on a background for it. The colors have not been decided as of yet, but they will. The intent is to match them and be consistent with the building architecture. So it kind of blends in with that, and also we would take into account the retaining walls, the color and styles is there, so all of it would blend together and look consistent with one another and blend and be an even match. 4 feet high off the top of the ledge, 10 feet wide for a total height of 6 feet with that 2-foot base, as I mentioned.
I will make sure we'll put the correct name of the project on it,
Yes.
Sean, when we install it.
Yes.
That would be helpful.
And so it's your opinion that the size is necessary so people will be able to, so it'll be visible since it's set back a little bit.
Yeah. We have proper site distances on the road. I was testified by Mr. Kennel at the preliminary hearing. But coming up the hill, you'll be see it, and coming down the hill, I think we have to do a couple clearing or so. It might be necessary to do it. And if the limits of the tree line, drip line is shown on the plans. There might be a small tree or something like that may have to be cut back a little bit just to visit from the heading, I guess, south or eastbound on Spring Hill Road. But we believe that the size is appropriate for the visibility and access to the property.
All right, so I think he's met the positive criteria, and I really don't see any negative criteria as long as it's done well and they get the right name on there and things like that. Getting back to the retaining walls, you have a picture, right? Some of those so the board knows some of the walls are pretty high. They're along the parking area. It's going to be 24 foot high, so they're going to be kind of prominent. So I asked Sean to get some photographs of what it might look like and the style of the block, and so it's so the board has an idea what it's going to look like. And
yeah, so Mr. Sachs, this before I show it, this is not something that was submitted to the board. This is in response to the comment from Mr. Dargy's letter that was received on July 13th.
Yeah.
So what was not be able to sit it is a truly an exhibit. So we'd have to mark it.
Yeah,
in
let's
there.
mark it for this evening's
Okay.
purposes, and I have a copy of this as well.
Okay, I just want to make sure before I presented it that you're okay with it. So,
Yep.
So,
so I guess,
so we'll mark this A1, Mr. Sachs. Is that okay? And Sean,
Yep.
can you just describe what it is?
sure.
That's fine.
These are photos from some retaining walls for some other residential developments, not in Old Bridge. The applicant took these the other day after our meeting with Mr. Dargy. It's an example of the style and the color of wall that would be that is being looked at for the project. It's that earthy tone, kind of a split face block, kind of a frontage with texture going in. This obviously has some landscaping in front of it. We will have some walls, but we'll have some landscaping in front of it as well. This is on page 1. This was dated July 14th, 2021. The second one is a little lighter without the landscaping in front. A similar idea. These are some typical size blocks, 8-inch high, 12-inch wide, split face. They're set back as required per the manufacturer, and they stepped up and down with the capstone on top. So these are what the applicant is looking and envisioning at this point. With the color palette and the style of wall. Once again, this is from a residential development that he's familiar with, I believe, up in Aberdeen that was recently constructed.
And just for the board's edification, we made some comments basically to have some more landscaping installed along the front of the wall by the basin, and Mr. Delaney's amenable to do that. So I think we can make it look pretty good.
Hey, anything else, Mr. Kay?
No, not right now.
Okay, I'm going to go to my board members, and I'm going to ask at this point if you have any questions for Mr. Kalana, Mr. Dargy, or Mr. Delaney. And I can't see the screen, so you're going to have to speak up. The map is, I'm sorry, that sheet is in my way right now. So,
Mr. Scogno, question.
go ahead, Mr. Scogno.
Mr. Delaney, I believe when this was first brought to us, you indicated townhouses. Now you're indicating apartments here on the map.
This has gone through as part of and Mr. Goen could talk about this too as well. We bifurcated this application. We had several versions of buildings on the play. One had an apartment building with some garages at one point. That was something that was presented. Ultimately, we actually had 3 buildings on the site and 75 units when we started this.
I remember that. What are they? Townhouses or apartments?
These are apartments. They are 2-story age-restricted rental apartments.
So I thought
This is what was approved.
the last time you indicated one could purchase a townhouse and then rent it. That's fine. That's up to the individual. But now these are completely apartments.
I don't recall mentioning that these were for sale at any point in any of the testimony that I'd done in the preliminary or the use variance. It may have been maybe at one of the really early on meetings, but the approval was always for the use variance approval, and the preliminary approval I believe were always for the 58 rental apartments for age restricted.
That's correct.
Yeah, but on my agenda, I see townhouses. Number 2.
Okay, I see your talk. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
These were not. At one point, I think we had some garages, so they kind of looked like a townhouse feel, and maybe the nomenclature just didn't get updated. But we represented these were apartments.
I really don't think the area can handle apartments of this size, 56 apartments. And now coming off of Route 34, how is the entrance going into the fountains at Old Bridge? Where do you go in?
We enter off of Spring Hill Road.
Spring Hill Road, which is 2 lanes.
Correct. And we are widening across our frontage to provide a full width shoulder.
And
back to the
And coming down from Route 34, you have that sharp turn into Old Mill Road, and then you go into Spring Hill Road.
Yeah, there's no access. There's only an emergency access off of Old Mill for firefighting, and that was coordinated with Mr. Garrity.
And that sign, you got the sign 6 feet high, coming up the hill, sitting in your car, you're now 3 feet, off the ground, that sign's going to be an obstruction to any passenger going out that way. It's
The
just,
sign,
it's,
I will say in response to that, we do show site triangle and site distance lines as required to the preliminary approval, and the sign is located outside of those site distance lines where a car would stop. So we believe the sign is placed appropriately, it will not block any site distance.
that's pretty dangerous. I traveled that road, and when you have to get off of 34 onto Old Mill, you've got to be sharp to get down that turn. So you might want to consider that. Okay, thank you.
Anybody
you.
else with questions?
Andrews,
Go ahead.
it's age restricted. What is that, 55 and over?
Yes,
Yes.
You have no elevators?
there are 2 stories. I do not believe it's required by code. If it is, they'll be in there, but I don't believe. I do not think we have elevators.
No, they're only 2-story buildings.
Yes, but for an age restricted 65-year-old carrying groceries up, even with the cart with stairs is a bit of a problem. And getting furniture or getting anything in, I realize it's not assisted living, but there does come a time when someone will be using walkers and canes, and that's pretty dangerous on stairways.
If you don't mind,
Everyone living in an over 55 is not 55.
if you don't mind, if I can jump to the
Sean,
architecture plans.
Hold on. Let me correct what I just said. There are elevators, so I was
Okay.
incorrect.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So that solves that problem.
Okay,
There are there's 1 elevator in each building.
okay, and there's no garage, no garages.
Correct, no garages.
And it's absolutely, the roads are easy for snow removal to come in, so it doesn't have to be private.
Well, if that's a private property, the town wouldn't handle that.
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure.
Yeah, there would be a property management company that handles the grounds and snow removal and trash removal and all that kind of thing. It would be a private company.
Okay.
Anything else, Ms. Andrews?
No, as long as there are elevators. I live in an over 55 complex, and from this I can speak from experience. Everyone is not 55.
Very true.
Yep, understood.
else?
Well, that was
Any
my
other-
mistake.
Any other questions from board members? Mr. Sachs, any from you?
Mr. Chairman, I have no questions.
Okay. I have none either. You have any further witnesses tonight, Mr. Goen?
I do not. So I guess we go to the public, correct?
Yep, I'm going to right now. This is 9-2021Z, Fountains at Old Bridge LLC, located 3 Old Mill Road and 90 Spring Hill Road. If you want to be heard on this matter, there's a list of phone numbers in front of you on your screen. Please call one of them. We will take your call as it comes in queue and try to help you out with questions or comments. Please call in now. Is anyone in queue presently? Ms. Sawant?
No raised hands.
Okay. Anything yet,
There are no raised hands.
Mr. Sachs?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we can close the public portion.
Thank you very much. Just to clarify a couple of things from our professionals. You mentioned you're okay with the sign as it is, would be a C variance for that because it's over the square footage. And the screening on the enclosures, on the trash enclosures that's going to be complied with, so there'll be no need for variance. And we need a design waiver on the drive aisles coming in, I believe, the cartways there.
It's actually a de minimis exception from RSIS.
That's correct.
Okay, and then I think that's it. That's all I noted. Mr. Sachs, did I miss anything?
No, I think you have everything, Mr. Chairman.
So what we would actually first vote on the C variances and then the final major.
Yes.
Okay. So we have just the sign and the waiver. Would you call it a waiver?
Well, you know what? For purposes of the vote, let's call it a waiver. The RSIS requires the driveway width to be a certain distance.
Okay.
However, there can be a request for a de minimis waiver of that. Actually, the procedure is, I think Mr. Goen's going to have to contact the Department of Community Affairs in Trenton to see if they'll grant it. And if they grant it, then we're fine.
Well, I think actually, Mr. Sachs, the board can grant it, but we have to notify the DCA.
That's what I mean. You have to get their
Yeah.
approval as well. Exactly.
Correct.
The process actually for de minimis waiver is that the board grants the waiver, and then the board's professionals actually have to write up the reasoning for the board granting that de minimis waiver and submit it to the DCA.
Right.
All right, thank you. Mr. Goen, you want me to go with the vote here, or you have any final comments?
No, vote please.
Okay. Board members' first vote would be for the size of the sign, which is over the variance limit. I mean, over the size limit. So it will be a C variance for the sign. Someone want to move that?
I'll move it. Dewhurst?
Okay, I'll second it. Roll call, please.
Mr. Dewhurst?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Geldof?
Yes.
Mr. Scogno?
I believe it would be an obstruction in public safety. I vote no.
Mr. Stoner?
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes. Then it would be, if I'm saying it correctly, a design waiver for the cartway?
Yes.
Okay,
Cartway width, yes.
okay. Does someone want to move that?
I'll move it, Kilduff.
Okay,
second Connor.
moved in second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Dewhurst?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Geldof?
Yes.
Mr. Scogno?
Yes.
Mr. Stoner?
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes. And final major site plan, correct, Mr. Sack?
Yes.
Does someone want to move that?
I'll move it. Stoner.
Stoner moves it. Is there a second?
I'll second, Kilduff.
Moved up seconds. Roll call, please.
Mr. Dewhurst?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Geldof?
Yes.
Mr. Scogno?
No.
Mr. Stoner?
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski?
No.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes.
Okay, application's approved.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Delaney, as well. And I thank our professionals.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Thanks a lot.
Is Debbie handling the next matter, or who's handling it?
There's a Rosenberg Associates over there.
Okay, so are you ready, ma'am?
I thought it's.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, does anybody need a break, or we're just gonna move right forward, okay? Unless there's a compelling reason we can't. Okay, we're gonna move right forward. I'm gonna call this matter. This is 12-2021Z. This is Edward Testino LLC. It's the OG1 zone, block 4187, lot 3.11, located 121 Route 34. This is for a multi-use building, first floor of office space, second floor of residential space, 3 one-bedroom, 1 two-bedroom, requiring D variance. Mr. Testino is representing his LLC. Sir.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you and the rest of the board members for taking the time to hear this application and for your service. As you said, I am the applicant. Basically, it's Edward Testino LLC, my wholly owned legal corporation, and JRJT LLC is my wholly owned property holding company. As you know, the site is at 124 Route 34, lot 3.11, block 4187. It's a 1.84 acre site. Because it's on 34 and prominently situated, I'm sure most of the board members are familiar with its location and its current features. From facing the building, to the left is the first aid and to the right is the fire station. Across the streets are some residents, and the property goes all the way back to border on some homes in Central Park. There's a conservation easement and many trees back there. If you haven't known it, I've been practicing over 37 years, but I've been in this particular location for just about 34 years. And it served as my law office for that entire time. I've been serving the community and my client base here in Old Bridge from this building. And many of you know it's a very unique, and because of its unique site and its position and longevity that I have here, I developed a lot of goodwill with this site. I've had thousands of clients over the years at my doorstep, and the property is special and unique to me. I have professionals here tonight who will describe the unique character of the property and the substantial reasons and benefits for the proposal. To me, it's a way to improve my law home for me and my clients into the future. We began this quest with a planning board application 48-18P, and I sought a new building there for my practice and upgrade, expansion, beautification. And I had actually filed a copy of the approving resolution. I'm sure you've seen it. And we were almost at the end. Then COVID-19 had hit, changing everything, changing the landscape of financing, the landscape of office space. In fact, the office space market had fell out and leases were lost, downsized, and most people working from home or Zooming like we are tonight. Anyway, I actually filed a New York Times article with this application. Just, I'm sure you've heard it before, but just so you know what the history of the site is, for 34 years, as I said, the site has been my location. And as a lifelong resident of Old Bridge, I'm familiar with the property because when I was in high school, one of my friends used to live here and his family used it as a home. And the site is certainly a unique location given its size and its proximity to the other municipal uses. But I seek to continue it for my law practice. In fact, this building that I'm sitting in was built in the late 50s, early 60s. And when I did a OPA request of the township, there was no building records, but you can see by looking at the building that it is a residential home initially built that was converted. Way back when it first was built, there was also a farm that was used on this property. But more recently, the site was converted to commercial by Russ Weber, who sought to build condominiums here, and then he eventually converted so that he could subdivide it. Half the lot that I'm on was sold to me. The other half was sold to the firehouse, and they've done a little bit of development, as you may know, since they acquired that. The proposal is to develop a two-story building of 9,806 square feet. It's a mixed-use building proposal, essentially the same size and shape as the previous building approval that I had on under the planning board. But I now seek the building to consist of two floors. The first floor, 4,009 square feet of professional space, non-medical use. And the second floor, 4 residential units, also consisting of 4,903 square feet, consisting of 3 one-bedroom apartments and 1 two-bedroom apartment. In fact, I believe this new proposal and the testimony that I present tonight through my experts will show that this new proposal is less intense. And certainly the reports we have filed and our planners will present that information and show you exactly what we intend to do on the site. As the proposed building as described by the professionals tonight would bring and give me the ability to bring about a new, improved, rateable, upgrade the site, and a new home for my practice. It will be, in my opinion, visually visibly appealing as you enter the Route 34 corridor. Here in Old Bridge, the building would improve the corridor and the visual aesthetics of the corridor. And I believe that's what's sought by the zoning plan. Tonight, we'll have before the board a bifurcated application, and we seek to have the use variance granted tonight for special reasons use variance. And for that reason, you should note that the engineering has not been fully done, that we intend to do that on the second half of the application. However, our engineer is here and he has worked through the site, and I believe he can answer most of your questions. It's our hope and intention that we will be able to continue to work with you and the town's professionals in developing that engineering once we get through tonight. As you know, the zoning here on the site is an OG1 zone, general office zone under the township zoning ordinance. The principal office use is permitted. However, the residential use is not listed as permitted in the OG1. It's simply omitted from the OG1. It's not even referred to. We would describe the surrounding areas tonight in testimony and demonstrate that the special reasons and the lack of negative impact on the ordinance and the community does not, and that it also doesn't impact the zoning ordinance. Tonight, I have assembled for you a fine group of experts who will provide the testimony and answer your questions. I have our engineer expert, Ernest Feist. He also has various planning license and has provided the traffic study. I also have Michael Testa, who is the architect, and he has provided the building plans and the rendering. And also I have before you Justin Osiello, who is a licensed planner in the state of New Jersey. And we hope and intend to demonstrate that the site is particularly suited for the proposed use, that the site can accommodate the use. The site development plan presents and provides buffers, and the proposal provides a pleasing aesthetic and compliant with most other requirements of the township, and that all light, air, and space requirements will be met. So with that, Mr. Chairman, and with your permission, I would like to move to my witnesses unless there's any questions from you or the attorney.
So, Mr. Testino, you can bring forward the first witness. Mr. Sachs will swear him in.
Yes, I would call Mr. Ernest Feist to the floor and have him sworn.
Mr. Feist, please raise your right hand. Thank you. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, please state your name, spelling your last name, professional affiliation for the record.
It's Ernest Feist, F-E-I-S-T. I'm a licensed professional engineer, licensed professional planner, certified municipal engineer, and a certified public works manager.
Thank you.
Just for the record, Mr. Sachs, I did file with the clerk a copy of his curriculum vitae, and his licenses are listed therein, and I provided you with a copy of the same, sir, for your.
Yes.
And I'm in the state of New Jersey, I'm assuming.
And I'm very familiar with Mr. Feist. We've known each other a long time. So
I'll accept his credentials.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Feist, did you prepare a use variance sketch for the proposed application?
I did. Yes, I have.
And in addition, you also prepared a traffic report. Is that right? You filed it?
Correct.
So let's go to the use variance application. Would you describe the site plan for the board?
Yes, I'll be happy to. This site is known as 121 Route 34, lot 3.11 in block 4187. As Mr. Testino indicated, it is in the office general zone. It consists of 1.84 acres. The approximate dimensions are 125 feet in width and 650 feet in depth. It's a narrow, long lot. The site is currently improved with Mr. Testino's law office, as he's indicated. And there's also a rather large conservation easement, which encompasses approximately 2/3 of the rear of the property. The site is on the north side of Route 34. It's located between Rachel Court, Old Mill Road. To the west is the Cheesequake Fire Department and Elementary School. To the east is the Cheesequake First Aid Squad and several single-family homes. To the north is a single-family residential subdivision. And to the south, across Route 34, is a mix of business and single-family homes. As Mr. Testino indicated, back in August of 2019, this site was the subject of an application to the planning board and received preliminary and final site plan approval for a 9,000 square foot office building. What's being proposed this evening is a 2-story mixed use. The first floor is proposed as 2 office suites totaling 4,903 square feet, and the second floor is proposed as 4 residential apartments. The site is accessed from Route 34 by a single driveway. Coming into the site, there is a parking field in the front of the building, proposed building, with 16 parking spaces, 2 of which will be handicapped. The building itself, and then to the rear of the building are an additional 17 parking spaces. Further to the rear is a proposed stormwater management basin, and that basin will discharge through underground piping back out to the existing stormwater management system in Route 34. With regards to traffic, during the preliminary and final site plan approval before the planning board, McDonough and Ray had prepared a traffic study. I updated the traffic study by taking a look at the difference between trip generation for that proposed use and trip generation for the use that's being proposed now. And peak hour trip generation for the prior approval was 14 in the AM, 14 trips, and 14 in the PM. The new proposed structure and uses will reduce that to 9 AM trips and 10 PM trips. As Mr. Testino indicated, this is a bifurcated application, and this is only a use variance sketch. There's no final engineering at this time. I've reviewed the ERI letter from Mr. Dargy and Mr. Praska. Take no exception to their recommendations and the comments they've made. And if we're successful this evening in the use variance application, a full site plan would then be proposed at a later date, and the comments and recommendations of your staff would be incorporated into that site plan.
Mr. Feist, I know that you took a look at the grades and believe that you know what you can do with the water on this site. What have you preliminarily determined with regard to how the water would flow on this site?
Yes, so stormwater management would flow to the proposed stormwater basin at the rear of the rear parking lot, adjacent to the conservation easement. And the grade is such that I believe we would discharge from that basin back out to the stormwater management system located in Route 34.
Yes, and there's a drain right next to the first aid building that you've already
That's correct.
seen.
That is correct.
Now, the July 8th, 2021 letter of Mr. Dargy, you wrote that. I've already stated the can be met.
Yes, so the review letter, again, this is not a site plan application. And Mr. Dargy indicates that in his review letter, but he has made some recommendations and made some comments with regards to the use variance sketch that we presented. And I believe, again, at the time of a site plan application, that we can satisfy the comments made in that review letter.
Okay. And Do you believe that there's ample parking for the site?
Yes, the sketch that we prepared, given the square footage of the building, we are in conformance with the ordinance. We exceed the required parking.
And as I already said in my opening, we're not anticipating any medical uses, so that was taken into your calculation. Is that right?
That's correct. We use the standard for general office space.
And the traffic flow on the site has been depicted. Can you tell us about the proposed garbage bin on the site and what is anticipated there?
Yeah, we anticipate that there will be curbside pickup on Route 34 like there is today. So the storage facility in the back shows 2 rows of 8-wheeled dumpsters, which would be moved from that dumpster area to the side of the road on Route 34.
Okay, well, thank you for your testimony. I will ask the chairman if there are any questions of you, or should we hold them until we get through the rest of the testimony?
There we go.
Jimmy, you there?
Yeah, for a minute there, I couldn't get the mute to go off. Mr. Testino, I'm going to allow the professionals first to make any inquiries, and then I'll go back to the board members, okay?
Thank you, Mr.
Okay. Mr. Dargy, do you have comments for this witness?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually don't have any questions for Mr. Feist. He's correct in that, when it comes to use variances, and we've been down this road before, with the board where you have a bifurcated application. So when it comes to use variances from an engineering perspective, what we're really focusing on is environmental and traffic and impacts to adjoining properties, really as in comparison to what the approved uses are. So from an engineering perspective, Mr. Feist covered pretty much everything. A lot of the comments in our letter are comments that they should keep in mind and consider and incorporate at the time of site plan approval. From a traffic standpoint, Mr. Proska, I believe, is on the line here. He works with our office to do the traffic reviews, and certainly he can answer any questions that the board may have. But in general, the board is looking at what traffic is generated from this site versus what the allowable uses are, or even in this case, what the approved use, approved site plan was from that the board approved back in the planning board approved back in 2019, and the information submitted by the applicant indicates, and we concur, that there's actually a decrease in traffic generated based off of this proposed use versus what was approved by the board.
Thank you. Ms. Sawant, are you in on this at all?
Yes, I am.
She's the main piece of this whole thing.
Do you have any questions to the engineer?
I just have one question, and maybe I missed it, but the office space used on the ground floor, is it just for Mr. Testino's office, or there will be another tenant who will share the space as well, the first floor?
I can answer that, Mr. Chair, if you will allow me.
Sure.
At this time, it's anticipated that I would occupy at least half of myself, because I have that much space right now that I occupy. Pre-pandemic, I was thinking I was expanding my practice and I would have needed the whole first floor myself. But since then, we've lost employees, unfortunately. And at this juncture, I'm only anticipating half the use for myself, with an anticipation in 5 years of growth that I would expand into the other side. But when it's first built, in order to obtain the financing, I would obtain a lease for the other half of the property on the first floor.
And the other half would be office use as well?
Yes, office use, general office use, non-medical. I would hope that it would be either something compatible with my business, like a title company, or something that, you know, we can enhance our own business by.
Thank you. That's all for this witness.
All right, thank you. Mr. Praska, did I hear,
Good evening, Mr. Chair. I think Mr. Dargy covered it. You know, our letter had a number of suggestions in terms of traffic and the site plan
okay,
that the applicant's engineer said they would consider as they move forward.
okay,
So
thank you.
you know, we asked them to take a look at that as they progress.
Do we have any comments from the fire marshal?
I believe there was a report submitted.
And it was found satisfactory, I believe, at this juncture?
That's my understanding.
Okay. I'll go to my board questions for the witness.
Question, Scogno.
Go ahead.
Mr. Centino, you said 37 years you've been practicing there?
Oh, I've been practicing 37 years. Here, it's about 34 years.
Have you ever stayed overnight?
Here?
Yeah.
I fell asleep at my desk a few times, but no, there's no bed in here. In fact, I get inspected by the fire company next door, and that's one thing they don't allow.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's no bed in here. Although I have to be honest with you, I have fallen asleep at my desk.
Yeah. So, being so close to the firehouse and the first aid, the nuisance from the alarm and also from the sirens from the ambulance should cause concern for residents that are going to rent your apartments.
Well,
I did speak to some resident there, and it's like living next to a school with the school bells constantly going off. One does get used to it, but 1, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, I don't think that's appropriate. Again, I travel there, and coming north, it's a quick turn into your establishment. But coming south, you have to wait for the traffic to allow you to make that left turn in there. It's only a 2-lane. There's a traffic light at one end, a traffic light at the other end. And then it bottles up. And so you have to wait for a nice courteous person to let you make that left.
I've been traveling this road for years. I know exactly what the turnings are here, but I leave that to the engineers and the state DOT. But other than that, I know there's a fire whistle up by the school. Many of the residents up there have complained about it. You know, by the high school there, they've complained about it, including one of the board members on the high school. Unfortunately, it could be deemed a nuisance by some people, but it's a need, and it's a public function, and I don't think that's ever going to change. There are residents across the street already. There are residents down the hill and Central Park. They all have to put up with it.
You had a nice,
Rachel Court right over here too.
He was lucky, I guess.
Yeah, I'm just saying the same thing happens when you turn on to Rachel Court coming off of 34. So, you know, you can make an easy turn in there. Any one of the businesses going up 34 have the same problem, including Pine Tavern, the doctor's office there, the spinal center that was just put up across the street, the spinal center's office across the street, or the chiropractor's office across the street.
And if you happen to rent to parents with children, how is the school bus going to get into your establishment?
Well, the units aren't sized for children.
So you won't.
The only reason I'm asking for 2, in case I decide to be a snowbird one day, I can have a unit here myself. But yeah, we're not anticipating renting to children. But there is a 2-bedroom unit, because my understanding and talking to various builders is that a lot of, I would be intending to rent to singles or married couples, but a lot of people like to have that second room, especially in this day, so they can Zoom. So that was a marketing decision. So I take your comments as well deserved. But I don't think it's going to be an issue here.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have anything for Mr. Feist? Mr. Scogno?
Oh, Mr. Fife, that was just about the traffic.
Okay.
Regarding coming south, I had to wait a number of cars to let me in, to go in. And once I got in the establishment, the fire alarm went off. So I watched that go off for a number of times. Okay, thank you.
All right. Anybody? Ms. Andrews, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Testino, do you know how many other areas similar to yours that have apartments on top of them? In other words, in strictly what I would call a commercial area, and how many have built apartments above their offices or their retail stores?
Well, there's one on 516 that I'm well aware of that seems to be struggling with the commercial, but the site was able to be developed because of the residential component. But then again, they built it just before COVID. And one thing I could tell you, I'm glad that I didn't have a shovel in the ground before COVID, because I'd have been ruined. But at the end of the day, that's the one I can point out to you right away.
Yeah, that's the one I'm very well aware of, because I'm very well aware the bottom, there are quite a few empty places there. And I was just wondering how many other areas are doing what you're doing, having these apartments above smaller, I can't call them strip malls because they're really not, but individuals, small apartments.
This is not a strip mall for sure. And
Oh, I know.
This is going to be owner occupied. So that's a big difference. And I'm not anticipating any stores. I'm just looking for office. My practice is my practice, and it's paramount to me. So whoever moves into this building with me and I anticipate my life as an attorney may have another 20, 25 years, because an attorney's retirement plan is work till you die. But
I know. My father was an attorney. I know.
So and at the end of the day I don't want anybody here that's going to cause me problems and doesn't fit.
Okay, I was just interested to know how many others. I do know of that one, but I know of no other.
I agree with you. I don't know of any others.
Yeah, neither do I. Thank you.
Anybody else on the board? Mr. Psychowski, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. I guess it's similar to Miss Andrews, because I'm looking at the rendering that we've been provided with, and it certainly looks like a beautiful office building, but looking at the general surrounding area, there doesn't really seem to be anything that sort of fits this style. I mean, it's certainly unique, and I am familiar with the property that you'd mentioned on Route 516, but looking at that property, it clearly looks like businesses with apartments on top. Looking at this, it looks like an office building. So I guess I'm my concern is that it appears to be office space with apartments. It doesn't look like there's apartments in it. So I'm not really sure if it fits the overall aesthetic of the area.
Well, we can address that when the architect comes up, as well as the planner. But the thing was, we have municipal uses on both sides. So we're trying to make it fit, and we'll certainly welcome any comments that the planner has or any of the town professionals that would lend to making it more aesthetically pleasing. But maybe you'll let me have the other professionals present, and then they can answer your question.
Okay, Mr. Psychowski. Good.
Thank
Anybody
you.
else? You want to move on with your next witness, Mr. Testa?
Yeah, I would call architect Michael Testa to stand. Mike?
I'm here.
Oh,
Okay,
there you are.
Mr. Testa, please raise your right
Around
hand.
the screen.
Okay. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, please state your name, spelling your last name, professional affiliation for the record.
Sure. First name is Michael. Last name is Testa, T-E-S-T-A. Registered architect in good standing in the state of New Jersey since 1996. Graduate of School of Architecture from NJIT 1991. Owner and principal architect for Michael V. Testa Architect, located Manalapan, New Jersey since 2002.
Accept, Mr. Jester.
Yes, I know that Mr. Testa's been before your board before, so you'll thank you for qualifying him. Mr. Testa, did you have occasion to prepare a proposed mixed-use building plan for me?
Yes, I did.
Can you describe it to the board?
Yes. May I have permission to share the screen? I'll share from my end.
That's up to Ms. Swan. Ms. Solons, should he share or you're going to share it?
I think I have the exhibits. I'm going to put them up.
Okay.
You want to start here, Michael?
I'd like to start with the plans first.
Yes, I'm actually opening them.
Okay.
Mike, just bear with me. I don't have I don't have the architectural plans in this bunch, but give me a second. Maybe it's there on the township's website. Yes. Yes, here we are.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. My name again is Michael Testa. I'm the architect for the applicant, Mr. Edward Testino. And we have before you here are floor plans and elevations that our office has prepared for the new building. As indicated in the drawings, this is a two-story mixed-use building with a partial basement. The plan you have up in front of you is the proposed basement plan. As you can see, the basement is only accessible on one side of the building. In the center of the plan, there's an elevator equipment room. And to the right side is just a small crawl space that is inaccessible by any occupant. It's just there for ease of running plumbing, computer cabling, and so forth. There's a elevator pick. That's the rectangular shape at the top of that plan. The elevator does not go down to the basement. This is only accessible through the one tenant space, which would be Mr. Testino's space. This basement area is, 2,084 square feet. It'll also house utilities, HVAC equipment for the office space and the residential units on the second floor. Can we scroll down a little bit, Ms. Swan? The plan you have before you here is the proposed first floor plan. At the bottom of the plan is Route 34. That would be the main entrance, the double doors, which is covered by a small canopy. You enter into a common vestibule. You either go left into Mr. Testino's area or right into the potential second office tenant. As you can see, we have a common demising wall running straight through the middle of the space towards the rear. And at the rear of the floor plan, you could see an entrance area and an exit area from the office spaces. The entrance area is to the rear with a covered entrance as well. That entrance will be used solely for the residents. There's a set of stairs, fire rated stair that'll take you upstairs. That will also take you downstairs. And as you can see at the back of the left side tenant, there's a door into that stairwell for Mr. Testino to get downstairs to access the basement. Mr. Testino's requirement for our design for the basement is what he uses right now. The basement of his existing building is filled with all of his files. And it's actually to a point where he's got to remove the files on a regular basis. He wanted a basement large enough that he can store his files and not have to move them off site. That's why the access is directly from the rear of his space as a ease of transfer going up and down and getting these files. The rear entrance also is a lobby and a utility area for sprinkler room, sprinkler riser, and other water, gas, electric, so forth. We have an elevator associated with this lobby that will take you upstairs. So it'll only travel 2 floors, the main floor, which really only serves the residential entrance, and the second floor, which serves the residential apartments. Each one of these tenant spaces, Mr. Testino's tenant space is 2,170 square feet, and a tenant space to the right is 2,017 square feet. Ms. Swan, can you scroll up to the second floor, please? Great, thank you very much. Just a little bit more. Great. In the center of the top of the plan, you can see that lobby that you saw down below on the first floor. So the set of stairs will bring you up to this lobby, or it'll take you down from this floor. We have the elevator discharging into the common lot area, as well as another storage and utility closet in the common area. You come down a central spine, it's double loaded, apartments on each side. On the left side, you have 2 one-bedroom apartments that are approximately 1,000 to 1,100 square feet. And on the right-hand side, you have a 2-bedroom unit in the front right corner and a 1-bedroom unit in the rear. Now, the units are large size units. They're nice, comfortable spaces, upscale apartments, Mr. Testino's request. We fully handicapped kitchens, bathrooms throughout the entire space. Each space has its own hot water heater, furnace located. They all also have their own washer dryers. Kitchens will have dishwashers, upscaled appliances, and large egress windows throughout the entire second floor for a lot of natural light and air. So if we can go to the rendering now, Ms. Sawant. Great, thank you very much. The exterior of the building is kind of a derivative to Mr. Testino's previous application and desired look from the street. It does have a commercial appearance. Mr. Sikowski's comments were very accurate. The front is facing Route 34. We tried to maintain that appearance on the street, but soften it with lighter colors that are being used more and more on residential buildings that we're designing. It has a cultured stone base around all 4 sides with accents on the tower elements. The building has 2 different tones of gray, as you can see, large windows again, as discussed earlier. That's the upper image is the front facade facing Route 34. The rear facade is on the bottom facing the residential parking lot. So again, you can see the entrance into that area. We use, just various architectural treatments such as cornices. We've concealed the parapet in case any rooftop equipment does go on the roof. We don't foresee that at this point based upon the ability to have a basement and the self-contained package units for the residential spaces. We, again, trying to, in keeping with some of the other buildings on the street in this area, I also designed the chiropractor's office across the street. It was very well received at the time as far as the parapet stepping, the various material colors, and soft appearance. And this was our goal, but we appreciate any input from the board if so desired for upgrades or changes or, just enhancements. And that would conclude my testimony at this point for the exhibits.
Oh, Mike, just to let the board know, how is this building relative to the other buildings that are in line on 34?
How is it? It's going to be, it's definitely, I would have to say better, but like I said, I did the building across the street a couple of years back, maybe in 2015. Again, very similar to that building. This is going to be a fully fire rated building between tenants and between the first and second floor. We're going to have a full fire suppression system throughout the building, and it is completely handicap accessible. So definitely an enhancement to the buildings located in that area as far as the quality of life of the occupants in the building.
And essentially, just so the board knows, the building's going in similar footprint, where the building is now.
It started off exactly that. The front of the building facing Route 34, and the corners are essentially the footprint of the old building. At one time, we were trying to keep the old building and we're going to build around it. And it just got to a point where it'd be more expensive to do that than to just take the building down and building a better building, a more code compliant building, and a safer building.
And as far as the look of the building, you've taken my request to keep it professional looking. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are there any questions for the architect or his plans or anything about the rendering at this point, Mr. Chair?
Let's see if any of the professionals do, but when I looked at your rendering, it looked identical to the Spine and Wellness Center across the street. That's what the first thing I thought before you even mentioned it. That's interesting that he did the same architecture. Ms. Sawant, any questions of the architect?
I just have one question. Did I see like a bike storage area at the ground floor? Was that a bike storage area?
Now, on the ground floor, we had at the back of the building a sprinkler riser and utility room.
Just 1 second. I'm below.
Yes, you see that square above the elevator?
Okay.
But I'm sure Mr. Feist could put, bike racks at the back of the building where they could, people could have bicycles.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to have that.
Well, the units are very large, so plus you have the elevator, so it's easy to bring the bicycle into the elevator up and store the bicycles in the apartment, which they do typically in most city apartments.
I mean, I have seen, since we're talking about the city, I mean, I've seen a specific bike storage area on the first floor as well. So maybe something to consider. I was saving all my comments for architectural plans for when we come in with, when you come in for a site plan approval, should the board approve the use variance. However, maybe you should look at some different window treatments, because I have mixed feelings. Like, do we really want it to look like a office? And I would, or do you want to have that enhanced feature with windows on the second floor to make it look like, to make it look more attractive? Because right now it looks like a blank facade which has one single plane. So maybe something for you to look at.
I'm open to that, just so the board knows. And I was only taking my vision and trying to make it look better. But if you think that look would be more acceptable, then I would direct the architect to go in that direction for when we come back in.
Sure. Maybe we can work that during the site plan review process part of it.
That's totally acceptable. Thank
I don't
you.
have any questions for the architect.
Any of the other, Mr. Darcy, you have any questions?
I don't, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and Mr. Prosper?
I just have two, actually, Mr. Chair. One's more of a comment, but it sounds like the apartments are going to be loaded from the rear, the entrance for the apartment. So just, I think a consideration would be if a potential ADA space goes back there, the accessibility to get into the entrance there. So you don't have it recessed at this point as you do in the front. So I think it's just something to consider as you're moving forward with the design. And then the second is a question. This might be more Mr. Testino, but it sounds like there's going to be some storage for the office in the basement. Was there storage previously for the last application?
I believe there was. Here, the whole plan has been for me to have my office, so I have 10 years worth of files plus in it. And with the cyber liability and all that, I've been going low tech even more now than I have been keeping hard files. I'm required to keep them from 7 years, but I typically keep them from 10 to 15 years in order to protect my clients. So it's a necessity that I have that, but the architect has given me some news that I might not be able to cost this thing out. So the first thing to go would be my storage space if I can't meet the numbers on this. So it's optional if I have to go without it in terms of building, but it's my desire to have it. Because right now, having them on site is so much easier to retrieve files, and Mr. Sachs would know this, to retrieve files when a client calls for them in a real estate closing or something happens that you have to get some papers out. I just go to the file and get them out, as opposed to going to a storage unit and getting them out. But that's the intent.
But for kind of a comparison to the previous application, you had the intent of
Yes.
basement storage under that application? Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Mr. Praska, while you guys were speaking, I had an opportunity to take a look at the old site plan, and it did indicate a basement floor elevation that was approximately 10 feet below the finished floor. So I believe that application did include a basement.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sachs, you have anything?
Yeah, well, first of all, just, and I agree with Mr. Testino, I think you certainly want to have storage for your files. And Ed, I think your proposed office is going to be about 2,000 square feet. Is that the plan?
Yes, it's the unit to the left where it goes downstairs. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I mean, just Mr. Chairman, members of the board, just to anecdotally give my information, like my office is about 1,800 square feet. I am a sole practitioner like Mr. Testino, so I don't think what he's proposing is out of the ordinary, out of character. I think it's a nice size office for a sole practitioner. And I think, the fact that we're agreeing not to have any medical usage on the other side of Mr. Testino's office is actually a good thing. Certainly that would trigger some unusual parking demands. And I know Mr. Testino mentioned a title company. There's a title company right across the hallway from me in my office building, which is equivalent size to my office. So that would probably be a good use. I mean, I can envision other uses might be maybe an accountant's office, maybe an architect's office, maybe an engineer's office. So, I think what's being proposed really is not out of the ordinary by Mr. Testino. And I would also concur with Ms. Sawant that I'm sure Mr. Testa can be quite creative in terms of the finish elements of the exterior of the building. So that's something I think he should focus on during the site plan stage.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Board members, anybody?
Scogno, question.
Go ahead.
Mr. Testino, what age group are you planning to rent to if there's not going to be any children?
I didn't limit the age group. I didn't say anything about that. I would like to rent to another professional who wants to have their office downstairs, but I don't know yet. It would be either singles or couples, and that's it. But I'm not planning on restricting in any way unless I was required to.
And Mr. Testa, regarding the bike racks design, where do you plan to ride these bikes? There's no path to ride these bikes. Route 34 doesn't offer any option to ride your bike on that highway.
I was responding to your planner's comment of possible bike storage. So if we were so required to have it, there's space for it, and there's the ability to store it inside the building as well.
It's a very dangerous road.
Anything else from Mr. Scogno? No? Okay. Any other board members? You have another witness, Mr.
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair. I have before you my planner, Mr. Justin Osceola of the Consulting Group, and I would offer him to be sworn at this time.
Mr. Sachs?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Osceola, thank you. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name, spelling your last name, professional affiliation for the record.
Justin Auciello, Auciello, with Confone Consulting Group. I'm a partner with the firm, and the address is 125 Half Mile Road, Suite 200, Red Bank, New Jersey, 07701.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Let me see.
Send you
You
his
testified before boards before, correct?
Yes, I have. I've testified in more than 150 municipalities in the state of New Jersey.
You will accept Mr. Osceola's credentials.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Osceola, have you studied the subject site?
Yes, extensively.
And can you describe the site and the surrounding area, or would you like to have the map brought up, or how would you
Yeah,
like?
if Miss Sawa can pull up the aerial, that would be great, and I can just orient the board. I mean, the board's well familiar, but I think the aerial is helpful for this application. That's perfect. Thank you so much. So where the cursor is pointing is the subject property. It's delineated in the red hatch as Mr. Feiss. Yeah, there it is. It's identified on this aerial on the Old Bridge Township GIS as number 121. As you heard from Mr. Feiss, the fire company is to the west, and the first gate squad is to the right. There's residential to the north. There's commercial that runs along Route 34, and across from the site is the Spine Center, and also some scattered residential. I think from the planning standpoint, and this is just the introduction to the planning testimony, and I'll get into this later on. I think from the planning standpoint, what makes this site unique in the context of the area is that it's narrow and has the depth is substantial. It's substantially more deep than it is wide. And why is this helpful? From the planning standpoint, it's helpful because this allows for development that can be oriented, closer to Route 34 as is currently. Stands today. There's a conservation easement. Mr. Feiss had stated that in his testimony. That extends for the majority of the site to the rear. So the beauty of this site, from my perspective, is that the majority of the site will never be touched. The building is going to be oriented to Route 34, and also, as you can see from the aerial. Of course, I think this is a unique location, being bordered by the first aid squad and the fire company, and in a corridor with a mixture of uses. If Ms. Sawat can also pull up the site plan real quick, please. Thank you so much. And just from the planning standpoint, as you can see in the site plan, the layout of the site the structure and the parking and the ancillary and the landscaping, that's all going to be oriented to Route 34, with the majority of the site, just eyeballing it, it's approximately 2/3, give or take, that will remain undeveloped. And of course, as Mr. Feist had testified, the stormwater basin there will be a flow towards Route 34. So when you're looking at it from the aerial standpoint and also from the site plan perspective, I think it's clear that when you look at impacts, and again I'll talk about that later on. This is a structure that's proposed, as you heard from Mr. Testa as well. It's really consistent with the character of the area, and especially the property that's right across the street. So really of minimal to no impact. With that said, Ms. Salwat, if it's your preference to leave this up, that's fine. But if not, I can just jump into the planning testimony. Thank you so much. So of course, this evening we're here for a use variance. This is a application that's bifurcated. We also do require a D5 variance for the density as well. So I'll just begin just to talk about the standard of proof for a special reasons use variance. And this is from the Medici case, and the Medici case prescribes a certain set of justifications or proofs that must be put on the record. The first is a showing of suitability, and whether or not this site is particularly suited to accommodate the proposed use. Of course, the proposed use being mixed use with commercial and residential. One of the first things as a planner that I always look to in trying to determine what makes a particular site particularly suitable for a use is the layout, is just the layout of the site without anything proposed. And in this instance, as I had previously said, it's narrow and it's very deep. So this, of course, this is in its essence, this is a site that is well suited for a structure that will be oriented closer to Route 34. Even though we are not in the site plan phase, if the board so chooses to approve this application, this of course will go to site plan. And even though we're not here to talk about any bulk variances, as you see in the planner's review letter, this is a site that certainly can accommodate this use. Of course, there would be a side yard variance, and I think that is a consequence of the narrowness of the site. But other than that, I don't really see much in the way of major relief from the bulk standpoint for this use. So that's reason number one why I think, as a professional planner, this site is particularly suited, because there's sufficient space on this property to accommodate. Also, as I had previously stated, this is on Route 34. It's a regional highway. This is really, when we look to mixed uses, this is one of those locations that we think it's appropriate. This will allow, obviously, easy access, not just from obviously Route 34, but Route 9, the Garden State Parkway, etc., which is a convenience not just to whomever would occupy this site. I also think too, and I guess this is a matter of opinion. I also think it's unique, given that it's located to the firehouse and the first aid station, and really there is residential on the other side of Route 34, and also to the rear. But what's proposed here, in my opinion, is not going to have much in the way of impact. And to a question from a board member early on about this could be a nuisance to somebody who would potentially rent on this property. I see it as personally speaking, if I had an issue with that, I probably wouldn't rent here. So I think it's one of those instances that, in my opinion, I think the location next to the first aid squad and the firehouse actually makes the site unique for this proposed use. Also, again, the development is in the front half of this property, just like as the planning board had granted the approval back in 2019, for the office building. And also, as Mr. Testino and as Mr. Testa had stated earlier, this is an older building. I believe Mr. Testino had testified that this was, or had stated, not testified, that this building was built in the 50s. So obviously, it's in need of a substantial improvement, much more curb appeal than currently exists, along a prominent location. So for those reasons, I believe that we do meet the standard for suitability. The next aspect of justification is the special reasons or the purposes of zoning from the MLUL, the Municipal Land Use Law. I certainly believe, it's my professional opinion, that this is an application that would advance the multiple purposes of the MLUL. I certainly think criteria G, sufficient space in appropriate locations, as you heard from the engineer and also in my testimony, I think this is a site that certainly can accommodate this use. There's certainly there was sufficient space for the commercial use or the office use that was approved in 2019, given that this is a use, as Mr. Feiss had testified, which actually has less trips, less of a traffic impact. And certainly there would be less parking on the site because the demands are less given the mixed use nature. I certainly think that there's sufficient space on this property to accommodate. Criteria I, that's the visual environment. Certainly, as what currently exists versus that and what's proposed, this is a visual environment that's going to be enhanced on the site, and also a visual environment that's going to be consistent with what's right across the street. And as Mr. Testa, I believe, had stated, the applicant will work. Should the board grant the approval, will work with the planner and the engineer to develop a product that the town can really be proud of. So I think really, for those reasons, there are special reasons, there are purposes of zoning that will be furthered by this application. Relative to the negative criteria, that's a showing if the proposal will substantially negatively impact the purpose and the intent of the master plan, the zone plan, and the zoning ordinance. In 2020, there was an update to the 2017 master plan update, and this is noted on the page. Bear with me 1 second, please. This is noted on page 3 of the updated letter from Ms. Sawa that's actually dated today, and it states that the update that's last dated May 19th, 2020, it includes a recommendation of the OG zone properties, and it notes a few things that are pretty interesting. It cites that the market trends are changing, and also the needs for the development, and it also states that the structure of the GO zones should be looked to for other non-residential uses. I think in this instance, and I'm not sure, and I'm not going to guess whether or not that this in May of 2020, this was done with COVID in mind, and really kind of the changing of the marketplace is that we're all seeing. But I think what's important here, and what's from the planning standpoint, what's important here is the language that's identified on page 3 of the planning letter. Changing market trends and development needs. I think this is an application that is really on point with that. Mr. Testino came to the planning board in the township in 2019 came with the application for an office building, pure office, no residential, and he got the approval. Here we are in 2021. The world has changed, dramatically in less than 2 years, and I think, in my opinion, that's really consistent with the changing market trends. So certainly, I don't see the impairment to the master plan in this instance. In fact, I think it's my opinion that we are pretty squarely on point with the changing trends, not just in the township and the county, the state of the country, but the world. So relative to the impact on the zoning ordinance, I certainly don't see a substantial impact to the zoning ordinance. The purpose of the township's zoning ordinance, for the most part, mirrors the MLUL, the purposes of zoning that are in there. As I said in the positive criteria over on the special reasons, this is an application that would advance multiple purposes of zoning. So I don't see the impact here. Relative to the zone plan, the OG1 zone, of course, does not permit residential. However, which is interesting in my analysis of the OG1 zone, is that it does permit hotels and motels. Now, I mean, obviously, they're not what we call residential uses, but because they're commercial, and they're transient in nature for lodging, but there still is a residential aspect there in the OG1 zone, which is permitted. What's also interesting about the OG1 zone is that it permits the occupation, the home occupation, as a principal permitted use, and the conditional uses are home business and home professional office. So even though the residential zone is a residential use is not permitted in the OG1 zone, it contemplates a land use that's secondary to a residential dwelling. Also, the OG1 zone permits a variety of uses, and some of which, in my professional opinion, are more intense. They're uses that can never really be developed on the site, but still, these are uses that are certainly more intense than a residential use, which as a whole is going to generate much less in the way of traffic impact. So even though when I look to reconcile the zone districts, not including a residential use in the list of permitted uses, I think that it's clear that the OG1 zone it certainly has some elements of residential therein. So again, and for those purposes, I don't see a substantial detriment to the zone plan and the zoning ordinance. The last prong of the negative criteria is a showing if the variance can be granted without a substantial detriment to the public good. And what case law says is that any application that requires variances, two reasonable people can disagree whether there's going to be a detriment or not. And certainly any type of development, whether it's residential, commercial, or industrial, two people can also think that there might be some detriment. So that's why the law states that the detriment cannot be substantial. Just a few points here, and I'll wrap up. There are less trips that would be generated by this mixed use. I've said that a bunch of times, but I think it's important to state that in terms of the negative criteria. The drainage, there's a basin that would collect water in the rear, not in the rear of the property, but in the rear of the building. and that's going to drain towards Route 34. So no impact on the residential. That's to the north and the northeast of the site. Mr. Testa had agreed to no medical office uses, which is a pretty high impact on the hierarchy of office uses. Also, I think what's also important here is Mr. Testa had designed this building to really have the appearance of a commercial building. Again, I think people can disagree whether they want to kind of jazz it up a bit more to make it a bit more residential, but I think in the context of the zone and also the surrounding area, this is a feature. This is a building that's really going to be consistent, with that character. So with that, I believe. Oh, and then one last thing, we also do require the variance for the density. I believe it's a 2.71, which is proposed, whereas 0 is permitted. Obviously, 0 is permitted because residential is not listed as a permitted use in the zone. The standard for density variance is whether or not the site can carry this use. Certainly, it's my opinion that the site does have the ability, for all the purposes that I stated in my testimony. Certainly the site does have the ability to carry that density. It's a relatively low density project. 2.71 dwelling units to the acre. Certainly, also in the context of the depth that's on the site, I certainly don't see that providing for a substantial negative detriment on the public good. So with that, I believe that that the board, with those justifications, certainly has the ability to grant the use variance and the density variance.
So it's obvious to me, Mr. Oseo, that you studied my site and you've also studied the ordinance here in town. So I thank you for your expert testimony. You did file a community impact statement with the board, and I just wanted to note that for the record, if there's going to be any questions about that. Is that right?
Yes, I did. And I'll just also note one more thing. There was a question or a comment from a member of the board that had asked about if families or school-age children coming onto the site. Rutgers University, going back to I think the 70s or early 80s, they've published a guide that's been updated on numerous occasions that essentially, I'm not going to go into great detail about how they do it, but there are multipliers that can be used to calculate the demographic impact, either on population or school-age children. One thing, and this is something that I learned in planning school at Rutgers, and it's something that I apply in my practice every day, because I get questions from clients all the time about impacts. Small apartments, in general, they generate the least amount of school-age children. 4 to 5 bedroom homes generate the most. Also, over time, it's been shown that especially higher end units like what's proposed tonight, these are units that tend to attract young professionals. Maybe they're single, or maybe they have they have a spouse, but they also tend to attract empty nesters or snowbirds. People who don't really need much space. They don't have children. People do not tend to flock to 1 bedroom apartments, or in this instance, 1 2-bedroom apartment with children. And if they do have children, they tend to leave before the children is of age to go to school. So I just wanted to put that on the record. I think from the planning standpoint, it's important to establish that these demographics have been studied for decades, and these type of apartments always tend to have the least amount of impact in population and school-age children, whereas a 4 to 5 bedroom, single family home tends to have the most impact.
Now, you've already said that you've received and reviewed the planner's letter updated today, July 15th. Do you have any other comments or questions regarding that? Or
I do not. Just bear with me 1 second so you can see my notes here. I believe there was a comment on page 5, second paragraph. The applicant should testify regarding the use on the first floor. I believe that's been covered. And you have also committed to not having a medical office there, and that's covered as well. The traffic generation issue has been covered. The architectural plans, the basement issue was covered as well. And then the last comment here was this triggers a density variance, and the applicant should provide testimony why this is appropriate. That was covered as well.
thank you for your testimony, Mr. Ausiello, and I would rest with your testimony and ask the chair if there are any questions from the professionals or how he'd like to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Testino, and thank you, Mr. Ausiello. Ms. Sawant?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So I don't have a specific question for Mr. Ausiello, but I do want to give a little background because I know that the master plan was amended last year to include specific language that said that the OG zone within the township should be evaluated for alternative non-residential uses. The emphasis was on non-residential uses for a reason. And it goes back into the past 20 years, although we don't, Old Bridge has a lot of apartment communities, but in the last 20 years, we have an approved GDP, which includes apartments which are not yet built. We went through our housing element and fair share plan, and when the court approved it, there were some interveners wherein there will be additional apartments that will be built in numerous places in the town. When the township adopted its economic development opportunity zone, the master plan that re-examination had specifically, the planner had just suggested that they should consider adding residential use on the commercial, but that was turned down by the council because of the numerous apartments that have already been approved but not yet built. So in terms of that, the pulse of the town has been that we don't want more apartments in the town. They want to encourage home ownership. They don't want to encourage rental type of uses. So, Mr. Ausiello, I know you mentioned it, but however, can you please reiterate with the community impact statement, and I did read your community impact. How many school kids would be generated? Because usually it's looked differently when there is an age restricted type of a use, right? Because you have no school kids coming out of such developments. Now you have 4 units. So can you just reiterate on the community impact in terms of school? I know I heard a lot about the traffic, and I agree. So does Rakesh, but can you just emphasize on the population increase and the increase in the school kids?
Yes, absolutely. And thanks for the opportunity to do this. So in the community impact statement, of course, this was prepared by me, and it was submitted in March 2021, or it's dated March 2021. I get into the impact on the population of this village children on page 4. Again, these multipliers were from Rutgers University. This is their November 2018 publication, which is the most recent. Prior to that, there was a publication in 2006. This obviously, to the benefit of all planners, is much more recent and better. From the standpoint of school-age children, for the three-bedroom, for the three one-bedroom units, the multiplier that's identified for apartments is 0.111. And I understand that board members or members of the public may not really understand that. It's just really, it's not really something that's easy to understand, but this has been done. They've crunched numbers. They've done a lot of mathematical work that's way above my mental capacity and my pay grade. So I really can't tell you how they develop those numbers, but those are the multipliers that are used by planners throughout the state in the assessment of the demographic impacts. So applying the multiplier for the three one-bedroom units, 3 times 0.111 is 0.333. Obviously, people are not fractions, so we always it's planning practice to round up to the next whole number, and that would be 1 public school-age children. I think it's also important to emphasize that this is a public school-age children that would come into the township school system. For the two-bedroom unit, there's 1. The multiplier for that is 0.477. Obviously, it's greater than the one-bedroom because there's the additional bedroom. And of course, 0.477 multiplied by 1 is, you guessed it, 0.477. So round it up is 1. So that would be a gain of 2 school-age children that represents, and they're currently or in the last reporting year to the NJDOE, Department of Education, there are approximately about 8,400 students in the school district. That represents an increase of 0.00023 of the enrollment in the school district. So that certainly would not result in any increase in the need for classroom space or staff.
Sure, thank you. I don't have any further questions for the planner. However, I know, I think it was Mr. Scogno who had asked or questioned about the bike lanes, the bicycle storage space that I asked for. The reason I asked for it is that Middlesex County has a bicycle pedestrian plan, which was developed in 2002. And according to that plan, Route 34, especially this area, and then Route 34 going to Spring Hill, there is supposed to be a bike lane connection. It's proposed, but it's in the plan. I have been working on other projects with NJDOT, the county. The common consensus is to create a multimodal plan throughout most municipalities, having bicycle lanes, having pedestrian connections. And that is why you might have observed that in every application, Ms. Shapiro or me, we insist on having sidewalks and adding pedestrian connectivity. If possible, having wider shoulder. I agree that this is a state route, but however, I think because there is a vision for it, any application that we go through, we should at least have, because once in future, if they happen to add a bike lane, we can't add the bike storage into the building, right? Mm-hmm. So it's better to be proactive and plan for the future. I know bicycling is promoted big time and has a lot of health benefits. So that's the reason why I asked, especially if you have younger couples or younger folks living in those 3 one-bedroom apartments. I think it's a good amenity to have.
I'm not disagreeing with you, especially since there's an entrance to Cheesequake State Park right down the road here.
Yes. And I think that was the reason why the bicycle lane was even proposed in that area. But yes, I actually, while your planner was testifying, I went back to the map I have and I verified before I responded. So
From
that's
the
all.
planning standpoint, yeah, I mean, from the planning standpoint, I certainly agree. I mean, I think anything, that the applicant can do in contemplation during, if the board so chooses to approve this during the site plan aspect, that's an extra benefit to the municipality. Certainly would advance the general welfare, of the community and the free flow of traffic. Giving people the option to get on their bike and not in their car. So planners, we always try to promote healthy communities, and I would certainly say that's a great point, Ms. Sawan.
Mr. Osella, could you pull up the zone map so that the board can see it before we close, or have the planner?
Yeah, I can pull that up. Do I have permission to?
Justin, I don't believe so. I'm not sure if the technician is still there, but what is the zone? Like, you mean the zoning map? Do you mean
Should
the
be
zoning?
on the engineer's plan if you could pull his plan up.
Sure, just bear with me for a second.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, can we enlarge that? So I don't know if the board can see it from here, but maybe you could tell them that the pink square there is the OG1, and that basically consists of the firehouse, the school, the first aid, and my lot. Is that how you read it?
That's accurate, and I would also add here that the if Ms. Sawa, can you zoom in a little more if possible? I think it would be easier to see here. But what's instructive about this, even though the R6 zone, I don't have the requirements of the R6 zone in front of me, but it looks like it's probably the main principal use is single-family residential, just by looking at the cul-de-sacs and the development behind it. What's instructive is that this is a site that's adjacent to residential. So what's proposed is a product, even though it's a different type of residential, it's a product that really isn't, radically different than the overall, residential character of the area. And residential certainly, which is it's identified by yellow or orange, depending on how your eyes are working at 10:45 at night. I certainly see that this is also a use of that's really consistent with the overall character of the area.
Thank you. I just wanted to get the visual up there. I don't have any further questions of Mr. Osiello unless the board has questions of him or other professionals.
Ms. Sawant, you were finished, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Dargy?
I don't have any questions for the applicant's planner, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Praska, anything? Comments?
No questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Sachs?
No, I'm fine, Mr. Chairman.
Good. Let's go once around the board. Anybody have any questions for the planner? Mr. Dewhurst?
Not a question, a comment. The R6 zone that was pointed out is quite a distance from Route 34. That's actually the Central Park section of Old Bridge. It's quite a distance down the hill from Mr. Testino's property before you even at the back of it, just for informational purposes.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because when I've been here for years, I didn't realize that my property went up against the neighbor's house down the hill, and then a tree fell and she called me, I had to cut it. So, I mean, that's how close I am to Central Park. So, yeah, you're right.
That's where you probably had to make your way through a lot of leaves to get through, huh?
A lot of poison ivy, believe me.
You know the area very well.
Any other board members? None. And Mr. Testino, I'm assuming that was your last witness for the evening.
That is my last witness, and
You have any objection to me going to a public portion at this time?
not at all, Mr. Chair.
This is matter 12-2021Z. This location is 121 Route 34 for multi-use building for office and 4 apartments. 3 one-bedroom, 1 two-bedroom. If you have any interest in this matter, whether it be questions or comments, there's phone numbers up in front of you on whatever screen you're watching on. Please call in immediately to one of those numbers, and we will put you live to speak to the board. Is there anyone in queue?
No raised hands.
Okay, we'll just give it a short period of time, please. Once again, I know it's been a long presentation, but if you're watching and you have interest in this matter, now would be the time to call in.
No raised hands.
Mr. Sachs, your opinion?
Mr. Chairman, we can close the public portion.
Thank you. Public portion is hereby closed. Mr. Testino, you have any final comments?
Just briefly, Mr. Chair, I want to thank the ladies and gentlemen of the board and tell you that tonight we believe that the proposal before the board demonstrates the required special reasons, provides an aesthetically pleasing improvement to the community. More importantly, we demonstrated with clear and convincing evidence through the planning testimony that their negative criteria have been exceeded and have been met. He's laid it out quite clearly that the proposal is unique and it's uniquely situated to the site. We've provided the expert testimony demonstrating the special reasons of the site itself and the ability to develop it without negative community impact. And I'm requesting, therefore, that you grant the variances requested and that we be allowed to move to the next phase of engineering and planning and come back before the board for site plan and any other variances that are needed as a result of the development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Testino. I just note for the record that there was one memo wasn't mentioned. It's from Keith Brennan, the Fire Subcode official, referenced this matter. He says, I reviewed the revised plans on 6/29/21, and I find them satisfactory at this time. Note the proposed building will need to be sprinklered, suppressed per code, and the water services will need to be sized accordingly.
We did receive that, Mr. Chair, and we acknowledge it, and I've given it to my professionals.
Okay, thank you very much. Board, before we take a vote, this is a bifurcated application, so really all we're voting on is whether we want to grant the use, and then if that survived, then we would, the second vote would be not only are we granting the use, but are we granting the density? So there would be, I would believe, 2 votes, Mr. Sachs, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
A D1 followed by a D5. Before I do that, is there any board member that has issues that would like to be brought up now before we take a vote? If anything needs to be addressed. Ms. Kilduff.
I have a question for Mr. Dewhurst.
Okay.
Yes.
Are there paid firemen at Cheesequake?
Yes.
Do they spend the night?
No.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, any other board member? All right, hearing none, then I'd be correct, Mr. Sachs, you would instruct us as to D1 use variance.
Jim,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Ms. Andrews has a question.
Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, she's in the top left square. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to know, at any time, since the one on 516, has any other, have any other people come up wanting to build above a retail store or above another office building? Has that ever come up before and has it been approved?
Yes.
Or has it has
Yes.
been approved? and have not,
Just on Route 34, no, but 516 had one. We've had various multi-use office with residential over the years that I can recall. On 34 itself,
no, not necessarily just on 30.
the township, yes. Yeah, we granted.
Have any of them been denied?
Mr. Sachs,
Well, I don't know if any of them have been denied. We've had, I mean, I've been the board attorney for 15 years or so. We've had many applications for multi-use that have been approved. We've had some that have been denied, but every application stands on its merits. So you've got to listen to the proofs that have been provided by their professionals and the comments from our professionals.
So then
And that's
nothing, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, what I'm saying is that every case stands on its own merits. So, I mean, you've heard some compelling testimony from the planner and from the engineer. I'm sorry to cut you off. You had a question though?
No, I just wanted to say, then there's never been any type of a lawsuit with the town of Old Bridge because something was denied that someone else had received in a similar situation?
Well, you're asking a very generic question. We've had a number of lawsuits on applications that have been denied. Some of those lawsuits we've been successful, and some of them we have not been. So again, you've got to carefully listen to the testimony of any application, and I think the professionals in this case have done a very good job of proving their case. That's all I can tell you. I mean, and by the way, anything that's happened in the past on any application on any other site is irrelevant for purposes of this application. Totally irrelevant.
So there's no such thing as setting a precedent that if you accept something that you can't deny something similar that comes up in the future.
That's essentially correct, because every piece of property is located in a zone. You may have an application 10 years from now on a similar application, maybe an entirely different zone, maybe entirely different circumstances, maybe a lot that can't accommodate the use. Maybe it's a much smaller lot. So again, you've got to look at the totality of the circumstances when you make your decision. So no, you don't set precedent in a zoning case, not at all. Never.
Okay.
All right, because everything stands on its own merits. Every case is different.
okay, Ms. Andrews?
Thank you, yes.
Okay. And did I miss any other board member? Okay. I'm seeing none. Okay. Board, we're going to, the vote would be for D1 use variance, whether or not the burden of proof has been met, whether it's site suitable, that will be your individual decisions. Is there someone in favor of moving this or denying it? All right, I'll vote in favor of the D1 variance. Is there a second?
Second, Kilda.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Dewhurst?
While at first I was not in favor because I thought we were going to be rezoning, as one of our former members would say all the time. We don't know that person. I absolutely, as looking at this, I actually think the combination of having housing and retail or commercial space kind of covers both areas. And I think it's going to be a nice building for something that's, an improvement on 34. So my vote is yes.
Okay. Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Keldorf?
Yes.
Mr. Scogno?
Well, because of the reasons I noted earlier about the traffic and the firehouse and the first aid, and it's just not suitable for residents living in that location. My vote is no.
Okay. Mr. Stoner?
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski?
No.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yeah, I don't think there's any traffic issue here whatsoever. I don't think you could have a situation where there's less generation. It's already an office, and adding the apartments, I think, will enhance it. I don't think there's any detriment to the zone or the public good, and I think the site is suitable. I believe they've met their burden of proof, so my vote is yes.
Okay. It approved.
D1's approved. Now we got to do the D5
All right, board. This
density variance.
is for
Larry, on this one, does Mr. Scogno and Mr. Psychowski vote on this?
You know what? They probably can. I guess they could deny a D1 and grant a D5. That's their prerogative. So
Okay.
on the roll. Yes.
Just verifying.
Yep.
All right, as the D5 board for density. This would be, I think it was called 2.7 dwelling units per acre, where there's 0 is allowed because there's none allowed in the zone. So someone want to move the density issue?
I'll move it, Dewhurst.
All right, I'll second it. Roll call, please.
Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Keldorf,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
No,
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski,
No.
Chairman Sullivan.
For all the aforementioned reasons, yes.
Okay.
The application's approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. and
Yes,
all
thank you.
members.
Was there a C variance somewhere in there?
The Cs will be dealt with at the site plan stage.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
I believe that's it for this evening, Mr. Chair. I thank you
Yes,
for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Testino, and all your professionals.
Thank you. Have a good evening and have a good weekend.
Same to you, sir. Board members, we've reached a point here that I don't think we can continue. It's 3 minutes to 11. Mr. Sachs, would it be proper to read the last application in and take jurisdiction?
Yes.
All right, is Mr. Clauser there?
Yes, he's down there.
Mr. Clauser, I just in clear conscience, I can't keep people here after 11. I'm sorry that we couldn't get to this tonight, and I apologize, but things just ran a little long, and we had some complex issues with the technology.
Would you indulge me for a moment just so that I can do my job on behalf of my client?
Absolutely, sir. You want me to read it into the record or no?
Yes, please read it into the record, and if I could just have 1 minute of the board's time, and then I'll listen to
It's
the.
okay by Mr. Sachs? Yes, okay.
Yes, yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, this is matter 25-2021Z, EOM 538 Route 34 LLC, located 538 Route 34. This is an amendment to approve, to permit different uses. It's in the R30 zone requiring a D variance. Peter Clauser is representing. Mr. Sachs, are we taking jurisdiction on this matter?
Yes, we can, Mr. Chairman. We can, I've reviewed the proof of service, the notices, the affidavit of publication. So the board does have jurisdiction. So yes, you can accept jurisdiction this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Mr. Clauser.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first thing I'd like to do is just, thank the board for being here and for at least giving me a moment to be heard. The application that was filed with the board asked for a number of different uses to be approved. Working with your professionals and the importance to this particular applicant, we agreed to wash away all of those uses except for medical. So if I have a moment for the board to think about it, the only thing we're going to ask for is medical office space to be used here. And while the board is not normally, but the board should not consider any financial issues, and I'm not going to with regard to the substantive nature of the application, there are a number of things in play for this applicant timing wise with regard to financing and leases. And so that's why I'm asking if the board has any indulgence to hear any part of this application tonight. It would be very valuable to the client from that perspective. It has nothing to do with the actual vote. But Mr. Chair, I respect your procedures, but I have to ask. But with that noted, the only thing we're asking for, if we did distill the application down to one building being utilized for medical offices. All of the other uses that were part of my application, I spoke with Vina and she said, Peter, if medical is what's most important, we can handle the other stuff at a later date with another application altogether. So we only want one building for medical. That is it.
No, I understand that, Mr. Clauser, and I know the board acted on this favorably a number of years ago, presented by another firm. but nonetheless, it may not be the time of night where everyone has that recollection and is aware of what's going on. So I would feel remiss by holding the board over to start something at this hour. Had you gotten started earlier, I may have permitted some, but it was already eaten up past the 10:30 mark. So I really have to say no to this tonight, and I don't like doing that. I know there's a lot of money involved in these projects, and it's time and effort on your part and the professionals that are standing by, and I'm assuming that's Ms. Coffin. So I'll apologize, but I just don't think it's fair to the board to proceed any further. And Mr. Sachs, am I within my right to say something?
Yeah, I understand Mr. Clauser's position. I understand the needs of his client, but by the same token, this is a volunteer board. We've been at it for 3.5 hours this evening. We haven't even taken a break tonight. So that's a little unusual. Mr. Chairman, if it's not going to be heard this evening, we have accepted jurisdiction. So obviously it's now considered old business. And Ms. Silverman, if we were to carry it to the next meeting, that would be August 5th.
Correct.
What else do we have that evening?
You have 2 D variances and 1 C.
All right, so
There's
obviously,
small D variances.
all right, but in any event, this certainly would be considered old business. It'll get reached that evening, I think, with some assurance, Mr. Clauser.
Okay.
That would be printed, and that's all that's on, nothing else to be added.
When you say you have small Ds, you have some floor area D4 variance applications?
Yes, they.
Homeowner applications? Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Is, I lost my question, Larry. Are we virtual still in August, or is anybody?
Yes, you are. I have all the codes and everything.
So can we carry this without notice, or do we?
The only thing I'm going to request you, you might not have to certify return receipted, but you definitely have to certify it, and you probably have to put in the newspaper.
Yeah.
It is a Zoom meeting.
Because the codes change.
Yes.
Okay, Kim, if you could just get me those codes as soon as possible, because I'm going to be away and I want to get Nicole
Tomorrow
started on
morning.
that.
Tomorrow morning, okay?
Yeah, that would be great. Mr. Chair and board members, thank you very much for letting me at least ask, and I understand, and I appreciate you being here, and I don't want to, no disrespect. Thanks for letting me ask.
No,
That's
and no
all.
disrespect, Mr. Clauser. I wish I could grant it. I just think we went beyond the hour, and usually I'm pretty flexible, but.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Well,
All
thank
right.
you. Clauser.
I'll
We'll
see you on the 5th.
Yes, very good, sir.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Board, do we have any final matters on the agenda, Larry?
Well, Larry, one quickie question. Have you met up with anybody in the judicial areas?
Well, it seems like every trial that Judge McCluskey gets adjourned. So I guess he's doing other stuff now. So the Metro Storage case has been adjourned, and I don't even have a date on that. And the Old Bridge Rifle Club case has been adjourned, and I don't have a date on that. So.
Okay, just thought I'd ask.
Yeah, and I'm not sure when the courts are going to reopen in person. I've been told September 1st, but I don't know. I think that may get extended. So.
Okay.
All right. I'm sorry that I kept everybody tonight, but thank you all for sitting still and hearing that matter out. We did get that. We got a lot of business done tonight. Unfortunately, it did go a little long.
In the future, if we're not gonna have breaks, tell me so I don't drink all the water.
Well, I saw you walk away from the screen a couple of times. So oh, don't worry. I was taking notes, and nobody had ball passes, so I'll deal with it a little later time. I have nothing else. Kim, you got anything?
No, that should do it for now.
Okay, very good. We'll meet again soon. Enjoy the summer. Be safe.
Oh, wait, but take a vote?
Yep.
Well, I'm going to call for an adjournment.
Okay.
But I wanted to preface that by telling everybody have a good time and be safe. All in favor of an adjournment?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, everyone. We stand adjourned.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Hi, everybody.
Right.